get more now with our panel. Luis Elizondo is the former director of a Pentagon unit that studied UFOs. He's also the executive director of the recent documentary Age of Disclosure. And Michael Sancho is a veteran television producer and author of his new book, Evidence of the Extraordinary, takes readers inside all sorts of UFO investigations. Great to have both of you here. Miguel, let's take a look again at this orb video. It's from the ones from July of last year in a remote part of the Northeast. A couple says they saw this brilliant red sphere with a white plasma center about the size of a basketball hovering for some time until a second orb joins it. Then they fly off. The files say the witnesses are credible. The video is from their iPhone. What do you make of it?
Great to be with you, for starters. Great to be with Lou. He's one of the heroes of my book. What do we know about orbs, right? So the public, as they're kind of getting accustomed to this whole discourse, they've heard of Tic Tacs, and they've, of course, heard of flying saucers. But it turns out that orbs are among the most common, if not the most common, type of UAP cited and reported. So they're out there. In fact, you can find, orb UAP videos from consumer smartphones all over the internet. What makes these particular ones interesting? Well, a couple things. First of all, the FBI not only seemed to deem these particular witnesses credible, but in at least one of the videos, one of the incidents, it appears that FBI agents went out, interviewed some of these eyewitnesses, and themselves witnessed a UAP, if not more than one, and took some photos. So there's a higher degree of credibility here than with your average mystery light in the sky. Very easily could be misidentified as Mars or a plane or a balloon in some cases. The other thing is this plasma factor. Now, what do we know about plasma? Well, it aligns with kind of a main theory of ufology, which is that it would be some sort of plasma-based technology that would enable a UFO, an extraterrestrial craft, to travel either faster than the speed of light or interdimensionally. So, go ahead.
Yeah, and I know, Lou, you have some experience of your own with orbs. What did you see, and does it look like what we're seeing in these videos?
Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you very much for having me. The reality is that the U.S. government has known about this part of the phenomenon for decades upon decades. It really started back in the 1940s during the height of World War II, where Allied pilots often reported the phenomenon and gave them a name. They called them Foo Fighters. And lo and behold, year after year, decade after decade, the U.S. government, to include my organization at the Pentagon, continued to investigate these orbs or these balls of plasma. And the reality is, I actually know the family where some of these videos were taken that you're showing, and the FBI agents. And I'm telling you, these FBI agents are dead serious.
And they saw it too.
They did, in fact, yes. And in fact, in the last tranche released by the White House about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, there was actually a very interesting report, almost hair-raising, where a senior member of the Director of National Intelligence himself was sent on an investigation to a sensitive military installation. And he himself, along with a helicopter pilot, witnessed for nearly 20 minutes these orbs interacting with their helicopter.
Well, that's extraordinary. Miguel, we also have these sightings in the western part of the United States from 2023. The original reports of these incidents came out with the first document up, but now we have these CGI animations. Why is the FBI creating these animations, devoting the resources to making these recreations?
So, again, the interesting thing about the Western sightings that were mentioned first in the first tranche, dumped a few weeks ago, is that they are part of a ongoing trend of sightings, well-documented sightings out in the West. Now, of course, the West is a huge place, but in Arizona alone, there have been a number of interesting anomalous videos that we've reported on before at NewsNation that show anomalous aerial phenomenon. And in addition, aside from videos, there are literally dozens of reports that have been filed by Army and Air Force pilots, documented by the FAA, out there near the Arizona border. So again, what we have here is a large number in both quantity and quality of witnesses and accounts. Yeah. The other thing is with the plasma business there, they talk about orbs coming out of orbs. That also aligns with an interesting theory, the so-called theory of von Neumann probes, which is a theory that extraterrestrials would be sending probes and motherships that would replicate themselves and surveil or conduct reconnaissance on the Earth that way.
Okay. Listen.
It's out there. Lou will back me up on that.
With each one of these document dumps, the latest, of course, being today, we're not only getting more information about the UAPs, these orbs that are launching other orbs, but we're also getting information about how the U.S. government's been handling reports of these sightings for decades. In today's documents, we got further confirmation, Lou, that while the government was actively trying to debunk claims to the public, internally, it was taking these things quite seriously.
You're absolutely right, Elizabeth. In fact, when I was even at the Pentagon myself and we were investigating, my organization investigating these, there was an active effort to try to suppress this information. And as we know, from 2023, AARO was allegedly in charge of investigating UAP for the United States government. And all the while, they were telling Congress, nothing to see here, folks. Now we find out that the CIA, and particularly the FBI and the Department of Defense, did indeed conduct their own investigations, and we're actually finding some very interesting results as part of those investigations.
Wow. Well, it's fascinating stuff. It's interesting. There's a poll out that shows more than half of Americans now believe in UFOs and extraterrestrial life. And I'm sure these document dumps and all this disclosure is going to a long way toward building that. Miguel Sancho, Lou Elizondo, thank you both so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.